And 0. Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to our second panel of Maintenance Panel Week, hosted by the Maintenance Community by Upkeep. I'm really happy to have 3 amazing panelists joining me today, and all of you also watching us today. My name is Heather Grant. I'm one of the community admins here at the Maintenance Community. Thank you once again for making the time to be with us today. If you are not already a member of the Maintenance Community, I will drop a link in the chat in just a moment on how to sign up. Today, again, I have 3 awesome panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment, but we're going to have a nice conversation about essential skills for maintenance technicians. The recording from our session today will be available right after we end, and we'll post it in the Maintenance Community on Slack tomorrow. Our panelists themselves are also available to answer questions in the Slack group, so please feel free to share the recording to the panel or the Slack invitation directly with friends, colleagues, or anyone else you know who would benefit from hearing some of this group's expertise. My last piece of housekeeping, and then we'll go ahead and get started. You will notice that your cameras and microphones are not turned on today, so what you'll want to do if you have any questions to ask of the panelists, whether that's a follow-up question to something that we're talking about or a totally new question for them, please feel free to use the chat feature there on the right-hand side of your screen. I think people are already jumping in saying hello, perfect. Chat your questions again. We'll do our best to incorporate questions as we can. We do have a preset list that we're going to work with, but we will do our best again to incorporate any questions from our live audience. That is all from me. I think let's get started with a round of intros. Thank you once again, panelists, for being here and everyone else for joining today. Jesus, why don't we start with you? Would love to hear a little bit more about you, your background, where are you based, what's your role at your company, how did you get to where you are today?
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Jesus. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I'm now located in Toronto for the last 3 years. I work with PDM Tech. I've worked with PDM Tech for the last 20 years. Before that, I have a pharmaceutical background. I worked as a maintenance and reliability engineer for the pharmaceutical industries back in the 90s with and some part of the 2000s too. So my role there was I worked with PM and PDM programs, and of course with technicians, with industrial mechanics, with HVAC technicians, and I had the chance to start up a couple of buildings, new buildings. Was in charge of planning and scheduling for a while, and also with the stock. So I'm a mechanical engineer and have a master's degree in maintenance and reliability engineering. And it was an awesome time working for the pharmaceutical industries. And now for the last 20 years, I lead a company with engineers and technicians. So we have both trades, and we do predictive maintenance services with our technicians. And there is a lot of documentation, a lot of soft and hard skills needed. And also, I work with engineers doing reliability and asset management analysis. Thanks for having me today again, Heather.
Awesome. Happy to have you joining, Jesus. Joe, why don't we hear from you next? Tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, what's your name, where you're based, your role, how'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Heather. I'm Joe Adam. I am currently the manager for engineering and maintenance at Roche in their diabetes care business unit located in Indianapolis. My team consists currently of manufacturing engineering, 3-shift support for maintenance, calibration, spare parts, and we support our manufacturing processes here in Indy. My background extends for over 20 years in primarily maintenance and operations within manufacturing. I have experiences not only within medical device, but of automotive, steel making, and some primary metals industries. So I've been across the multiple industries, dealing with union and non-union shops. So you have that differentiation between skilled trades and union shops, and when you have multi-craft also. So glad to be here. Look forward to the panel.
Awesome. Happy to have you joining as well. Michelle, last but certainly not least, let's hear a little bit more from you. Start off by just sharing a little bit more about your background, your name, company, where you're based, what's your role, how'd you get to where you are today?
Sure. Hi, my name is Michelle Baker. I'm the manager of reliability and maintenance for the facilities team here on site. I work for Roche, and I'm at the same facility that Joe is also located at. So my team consists of the technicians that maintain the facilities assets, also spare parts, very small reliability team that we've started as well. So I've been here 9 years. It's a great company. We have about 2.1 million square feet under roof and about 164 acres at this campus that we maintain. So it keeps us busy for sure. My background, other than a couple years in automotive, General Motors, most of my career has been spent in pharmaceutical or medical device facilities for the most part. A little stint in manufacturing here in Joe's group when I first started at Roche. So when I started out at my first job in pharma, it was a reliability engineer role, then went into a project engineering role, and then into various roles of leadership in maintenance. So I'm really happy to be here and have this discussion. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, sounds like quite the expansive campus there. Yeah. So thank you so much for finding a little nook on it and joining us today. Cool. So our conversation today is going to focus on the questions that we received from members of the maintenance community about what it means to be an outstanding maintenance technician. So we're going to talk a little bit about hard and soft skills, career options, career pathing, and how to kind of continue learning and growing constantly in the maintenance technician role. So to get started, kind of with a simple question that answers maybe just the title of our panel as well. What are some of the hard skills, and then I'll follow with soft skills, that are essential for maintenance technicians to have? You know, what are those maybe 3 or 4 that you just can't do without to be a great maintenance technician in terms of your hard skill set? Any thoughts?
I guess I'll start off a little bit. This is going to be based on I'm going to go from the mindset of a multi-craft maintenance technician, right? Especially since most organizations nowadays are going to that mode of operandum, just due to the resources or lack thereof that are available within the skilled trades. Some of the very basics really is what I'm finding that people are lacking. And I think that's important to make sure that you have those hard skills. And those are related to, print reading, your precision maintenance techniques related to what's the proper torque settings for your bolts, how do you do proper alignment for rotating equipment, how do you do a proper alignment for other aspects, whether it's cylinder movements in certain applications to make sure that you're not rubbing up against something, items like that. And then, of course, this is kind of a hard to soft skill, is really your troubleshooting ability. What's your thought process when you're going out to troubleshoot a problem, or kind of my top 3?
Yeah, I totally agree with Joe. So in my notes here I have a couple of those that Joe already mentioned, like predictive maintenance, like precision maintenance, for example. So if we have a good predictive maintenance program, but we don't know how to repair adequately, we don't know how to set up things, we don't know how to do precision alignment. For example, also lubrication skills are really important, since most of the mechanical type of failures for rotating equipment, entail either lubrication or misalignment, things like that. So those are very important hard skills that technicians from the mechanical perspective must have. From the soft skills perspective, I will tell you that proper documentation is one of the most important things that we see, that we lack of from technicians. They are very good repairers, they're very good technicians doing the fine-tuning things, but documentation, then when we as reliability engineers depend on that documentation to do our analysis, we see that there is no a good documentation we can rely on for doing our analysis. And also following written procedures. It's something that, technicians are great, and they like the field all the time, and it takes some motivation, it takes some follow-up to get the appropriate written procedures follow-up with them. So that's basically my idea on it.
Yeah, I think those are both what Joe and Jesus said. I totally agree with. I'll address a little bit of the hard and soft skills. Like one of the things that I can tell you, being on the facility side, trying to start up a reliability program, and also at the same time, our company, like many others, has a very ambitious goal of being zero emissions by 2050, right? So on top of the technology that and just the knowledge of like the precision maintenance and the things that Jesus and Joe just mentioned, those challenges from a sustainability perspective bring about new technology that we have to put in place, even from an HVAC perspective. Maybe there's systems that are only seen in Europe, or I mean, you name it. We're seeing all sorts of unique things that we got to put in place that technicians may or may not have seen on the facility side. So when we get into the soft skills and bringing people in to work on systems that they may have never seen before, as long as somebody is curious and they have the ability and aptitude to learn, and they have a positive attitude, we have found that the learning curve can be cut down pretty short in a short frame of time, just and get those guys going if they have those skills, right? So, I mean, if somebody is decent, and you can assess that. I know that was one of the questions, like, how do you assess somebody who's coming in with a baseline of skills? As long as you have that down, I don't know that we do, but presuming that they have a baseline of knowledge with those soft skills in place, we have had really good luck bringing in people newer in their career, or maybe that are coming from more of a manufacturing environment into facilities, if they have that willingness to learn. So.
Yeah, and I think another point on the soft skills that kind of relates to what Jesus was saying about, you know, the documentation aspect. You know, that's the written part of the communication, the work order management part that helps you with the data analysis. But also, you got to remember, most maintenance technicians, they're there as a support group, and they have customers that they're front facing with, right? So also there's the verbal aspect of it. What's your customer service rapport with, whether it's the operator running the machine or the person that called in the work ticket for, if you're a facilities technician, you're right. How do you approach those situations to get the information that you need to start your analysis for your troubleshooting, but then also the follow-up for the written communication? You know, you have to be clear and concise. We don't need a 3-page dissertation on the work you did for you know, lubing a bearing, but we would like to know the rationale and how you got to that point. So
Joe, and nowadays we have a lot of resources we can depend on. For example, nowadays you can take a picture. That wasn't possible in the 90s. You couldn't take a picture and send it over the internet for your supervisor to take a look at it. So we have a lot of resources on our hand that will facilitate that work, that documentation a lot. We have to bear in mind that we are technologists, we are scientifics, we are engineers, we are not educators, we are not, let's say, writers. So our passion is to do things. Our passion is to solve problems, and we need to facilitate those guys, you know, with tools, the appropriate tools for them to document, you know, adequately. And yeah, we have to understanding that, you know, because of our technical background, we don't like writing, so we need to facilitate that process to gather that important information as leaders.
Yeah, exactly. As leaders, whatever we can do to make it easier for them, right?
Yeah.
Emojis. There's a way to do work order emojis.
Yeah. Boxes, you know, with a list of failure modes with boxes. What do you find? I found this, I found that. What kind of spare part you used? I used this one, but don't wait for them to tell you, you know, to write a paragraph to you with all of the details.
I have several follow-up questions that came out of that, but kind of one that I'll start with maybe is, how do you ensure that your facility, you know, you're saying set people up with the tools, but how do you kind of build the process and the culture of, you have to follow these written procedures, you have to do the documentation this way? Is it just part of their training? Is it more of like a mindset that you have to instill in people, or how does that kind of look in your teams?
Well, I mean, I'm going to speak on that a little bit just because of where we're at now with FDA regulations. Everything has to be documented. So it's kind of instilled when we bring people in new and train them to that techniques. And we have procedures around what the expectations are to follow the procedures and do that. But I think also part of that is just what's the leadership's role, and if you expect that to occur, you have to inspect to make sure that it is occurring. So you have to be floor present with your technicians to understand, hey, if they're doing a preventative maintenance activity and it's written a certain way, you should have some type of either ad hoc or formal observation process in your mind that you can go out there and just, you don't have to watch them do their whole job, but just get an understanding, are we doing this right? Are we doing this the way it's written? And to that same point, what we do is when we find something that's written poorly, we ask for feedback so that we can correct it, so that those steps can be more clear and concise and be more accurate. So.
Yeah. Have you ever seen something, sorry, Michelle, you maybe can answer this too, but have you ever seen it happening kind of peer-to-peer, or is it mostly from leadership down to technician, right? Is it something that also kind of goes on like laterally across teammates?
It can. And usually that's probably the best scenario, is if you have peers that are kind of keeping each other in line, because they're the ones working with each other and have to follow up on somebody's craftsmanship, right? If somebody's not doing it appropriately. And that's peer pressure is usually the best pressure as opposed to, the leadership pressure.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that I know we're working on, like you'd asked about training and what does that look like? Of course, being an FDA regulated environment, there's just certain regulations that say we do what we have to do. There's not a lot of leeway on some of that, as like in a lot of other industries, but we're really trying to make just as an example, our preventive maintenance procedures, just again, assuming someone has a good baseline of knowledge, like let's make it so easy for somebody to follow, right? Like super clear. And also on like what Joe was saying, if a change has to be made, let's not make it so painful that then somebody won't say, hey, this step on the PM isn't right. And they shy away from it because it's too difficult to make changes and it takes too long. And there's this huge cumbersome process. We're really trying to streamline our processes. So when a technician brings a problem to us, we can quickly and easily get it solved, because that has not always been the case. And I know pharma industries are notorious for that. I know others are too, but that's been a key in terms of, I say training, but just, again, streamlining all of our processes, training along with just day-to-day activities. It just makes it so much easier.
Yes. On top of that, I would like to mention also that it is important to let the technician understand how relevant is his or her work for the organization. So it is so important that we do close this documentation, because we have to comply with this and that, for example, FDA in the pharmaceutical industry, and how relevant is for us as, let's say, reliability engineers to have that data. How can they contribute to improving the plant reliability? How can they contribute to improve the plant availability, production, avoid quality situations? So it is good to reinforce, the good behaviors, and also to discuss when things don't go well, when we have near misses that we were very lucky we didn't have, something worse. It is very important to let them know how important is their role for the organization. So let's give them some credit. Let's let them know that they are really important for the organization, and that will kind of motivation will enable improving documentation.
Awesome.
It is not easy though. It's easier to say, but not, but that has to happen. That's an ongoing process. We are all human. We need motivation.
Of course. Awesome. Well, another question while we're kind of on the topic of, skills and technician skills, and we've talked a little bit about, hiring and training, but in terms of hiring, how do you kind of quickly determine the technician's skills, these foundational skills that we're talking about, in addition to maybe those softer skills, the mindset, but how do you, look at skills during the hiring process?
Well, one of the things that this is something that we do not have perfected, at least in my group for sure. I mean, recruiting is always kind of, I don't know, it can be kind of a cumbersome process in larger companies, I feel like. And one of the things that we have attempted to do with any of our new hires is really try to get the technician candidate in front of engineers that they're working with, the technicians they may be working with, more in a informal setting. Like I'll say, hey, go take a tour through our chiller building, and I'll have my technician asking some questions, right? So it's a less formal interview type situation. You can kind of gauge somebody's comfort level or discomfort level, some of the questions that they're asking, how, like what I think, Joe, you made the point of, like, how are they interacting maybe with an engineer? Like, what is that communication style that they have? Are they going to be able to be coherent at 2 a.m. when, things are falling apart and they need to really communicate clearly? That's worked well for us. I think one of the things we've worked on developing, I know this is like nothing new, a lot of companies have this, but more of a simple testing type scenario when the technician comes in, like before they're even brought in for a primary interview. We do not have that established. Joe, I don't know if you do anything on your side these days. And sometimes we're kind of limited a little bit by what HR wants us to do or not do. And again, we're non-union, right? So we have to kind of walk that line. So sometimes it's a little hard to do a true assessment in certain situations.
Yeah, we kind of started doing, well, for one, we have the peers or who would be the peers part of our interview panels now. So in essence, not only are the leaders interviewing these new candidates as they come in, we also have peers that are part of our panel. And some of our more senior people have actually put together their little template of the more technical questions that they would like to know from these individuals. And though it's not a formal quiz, it's more a technical question. How would you solve this problem? And it's something that we've actually faced. So that way we get a sense of, do they know, or because maybe they don't know our exact processes, would they be able to grasp it? And so that's kind of helped us out a little bit from that perspective, and kind of weeding out people that just write stuff on their resume, but when you talk to them, they really didn't know what they were meant by what was on there. So that's one thing that we've done here in the last few years to kind of vet some of that out.
I like 360 interviews. I got one done some time ago. It was like some 15 years ago. Everybody interviewed me. It was up in Michigan. The plant manager, the engineering director. It was for a maintenance manager position. All the peers, the technicians, everybody, and it was awesome because you got everybody's perspective and everybody know you. Now it is so difficult, to interview because a technicians can do so many things. So you may want to have a technician that is purely a technical person and do repairs, but there are other kind of work that you may wanted to have a person that is good at documentation, that is good at doing some soft, performing some soft skills. So it is kind of difficult. But anyways, it is good to have the whole perspective. Everybody has perspective, even the peers. So and also I wanted to bring a point that Joe said some time ago. So having technicians working with, having the peer pressure, as you said. So I believe in that. Sometimes when you have a friendly, competition, with the technicians, when you have a senior technician, that is feel like he or she needs to help the peers, to improve the skills. Having that is so fantastic for the organization. So most of the things get solved within them, among them, so that you don't have to many things got solved in the floor, and you didn't even, realize that. So that's perfection. That is, the way we should go, so we can empower them to help each other. Awesome.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I know hiring is always a kind of evolving process. We definitely feel that in my internal
Yeah,
too. So
absolutely.
it's a hard
Absolutely.
question, but thank you. I think the formal and maybe more informal conversations with peers is definitely a really interesting way to kind of explore that and maybe elicit like different kinds of responses than if it was the manager or a higher up from the top of the department or anything like that who was interviewing. So that's really interesting. I appreciate sharing. Switching gears a little bit here, I'm going to kind of start to flow into maybe career paths and career kind of choices. And also kind of going back to something that Joe mentioned in one of his first responses, but I think that there's a little bit of, at least certainly maybe earlier in your careers, there's kind of some fluidity between being a technician, being an engineer, being a mechanic, being a multi-craft technician versus a very specific technician. So what kind of is like the maybe the motivation to choose one or the other, or is it better to be a multi-craft or a specific engineer, or kind of what does it look like to choose one of those different avenues in maybe a role that could have all of these different niches, if that makes sense? I can try and rephrase too if it's a little confusing.
No, I was just trying to gather some thoughts here.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it's going to be based on the individual, right? There's some individuals from a career development standpoint, they're happy with being more technical, more hands-on, right? So then it's a matter of, in my opinion, building your breadth of knowledge, right? And being more broad in what you know about. But then there's also people that are looking for different career development from an advancement within the organization, right? So that would be technicians that might want to move into leadership, right? Or technicians that want to move into engineering, right? So I've dealt with all different aspects of that from individual basis, and there's a lot of opportunities there for everybody. But that's really about what does the individual want, and if they're really not sure, then that's a conversation with their leadership on, hey, I'm interested in all of this. What makes the most sense for me at this time and place in my career to move the needle a little bit, right? And that's part of that conversation that the leaders should be having with their team about, okay, well, if you have an interest in this, we have a need for that. So let's push you in that direction, and then we can figure out the rest of it as we go along, and you kind of build that path, right? It's no different than when you're as a team and you're building your reliability roadmap. You have a vision for the future and you're marching towards it. Well, you have to think of the same thing as a technician. What does my career development roadmap look like? And it could be this wide of a lane when you start, but you're only marching down part of it and hopping along as you go. So
I remember, Joe, a technician was a person that started his career as an instrumentation technician and went up to the general management. So he was later on, like 20 years later, the general manager. So he started engineering later on. He was the maintenance manager and then the production manager and so forth. And 20 years later, he ended up being the maintenance manager. And nowadays, he's a PhD guy, retired from the industry and working as a professor. So it depends what motivates you, what motivates the people. But there is, of course, there is room for everybody. People that are really interested in technical things, other things than putting his or her hands on, or the let's say the educational things, the administrative things. There is room for everybody. And I've seen technicians and engineers being the whole careers, hands-on people, working in shutdowns, working in troubleshooting. That's what they like. And I've seen others moving up to managerial positions, and there is room for everybody. There is opportunities for everyone, depending on the personal interests.
Yeah, and I think while an employee ultimately owns their own destiny and development and career path, I think that's where, as a leader, a good leader is one that can really help that employee and proactively help them understand what's available if they want to stay at the company that they're at or in the department that they're at, because it is so different from company to company. So like, the technicians that want to stay in an individual contributor technician role, that's awesome. Well, what do we got to do to get you to be the best technician you could be? And then likewise, if you want to be an engineer or in maintenance leadership, what is it going to take? Some companies, like our company's a prime example, Roche. I mean, to be in leadership, for the most part, you got to have a degree, whether you agree with that or not. It is what it is. So you got to help them figure out what that path is, and what's best for them. And like what you guys were both saying is like, what's the need within the company? Because at the end of the day, that's what the company's looking for. But as leaders, we got to help people develop in a way that is satisfying to them, because those people will be really great, productive employees. And like what you said, Jesus, there's room for everybody. At most companies, if they're willing to put in the work, and leaders are there to help develop them.
Yeah. And I think too, and I know Michelle, you know this just since we work so close together, when we have people that aren't sure, we try to expose them to different aspects of what they think they're interested in, right? I know there was an employee on our team a few years ago. He asked me a question. He's like, well, I'm not sure if I want to move into engineering or if I want to move into leadership. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to pick one. Right, and start a path, but we can kind of get you a little bit of exposure and familiarity with what that path would look like, and then you can make that decision. Because in essence, we can't make that for you, but we can help guide you on what that's going to look like as leaders. So a lot of that comes from the individual, from that perspective.
Joe, you are reminding me of a engineering director we had in a plant. So he was new to the plant, and the first day he interviewed everybody. What do you do, Jesus? Well, I do predictive maintenance. I do PM with my group. And what do you do, Jose? Well, I do instrumentation. Okay, Jesus, now you will do instrumentation. Jose is going to do PDM. You are going to utilities. And why is that? We are so comfortable. So how do you know if you like something else if you don't try it? So we spent like 2 or 3 months. I led the instrumentation shop for a while, then the electrical shop for a while, then utilities. So we had kind of the overall background, and that helps, people to get excited, as you mentioned, Joe.
Yeah, it kind of builds that breadth of knowledge, and then what also helps the team with, it helps people not get complacent, and it helps build bench depth, right? In cases like we just went through with the pandemic, if you lose a whole bunch of people because of quarantining, you need to make sure you have the bench to kind of fill in behind those people. So,
and put you in the position to rely more on your group, because you are not the expert. So you are new, and you have to learn some other skills from them, from the technician, from the other engineers.
A note there. I like that last thing you said. That's awesome. So another kind of question, pulling along this kind of career trajectory conversation, so kind of concerning progression and maybe lateral or upward movement, how easily is it to kind of transition between those roles? It might differ again from company to company, but in your experience, how easy is it for someone to say, all right, I do want to make that jump, or I do want to move up? Is it moving up within the technician space, or is it moving up to a leadership position? Kind of what does that motion look like, either laterally to a different role or upward to a maybe next promotional role?
I've seen it recently within my team. I know there's 3 of the engineers on my team actually came. 2 of them were maintenance technicians at one point within the same team. One of them actually came from the production floor. He was an operator in our packaging area and had gone through the program the company has and got his engineering degree and then transitioned to engineering, right? So again, it's going to be company specific, but it's fairly easy if you have the desire to do it here. And then we've also seen situations where technicians move up to senior positions that we have within our groups, and then there's been a couple of situations where technicians have moved on to some field service engineering type roles that we have within our company. That really is the same skill sets, except instead of working on the manufacturing equipment, they're working on the consumer equipment that we sell, right? So they're supporting a hospital because they bought Roche lab equipment. And then, the hardest one, I think, is for a technician to move to leadership while trying to lead within the team he came from. I've seen it happen a couple times, and it's the hardest move. If a technician really wants to move into leadership, it's not the transition to leadership, it's trying to lead people that was once your peers. I would highly recommend that you try to move into a position where you're not leading your peers, because the success rate of that is very low, primarily because it's hard to turn off. I've been buddies with these guys, I have battle scars with these guys, and now I have to lead them. In some organizations, it's very difficult to make that transition.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Joe. I know, I've had technicians that have that desire to lead. They express that desire. We work on their development plan, but I learned after seeing maybe not very good success stories and that happening, leading their own peers. It's as a leader, being brave and bold enough to have those conversations saying, hey, Bob, you can be a great leader and here's what we're going to do to get you there, but you need to step outside of this group and lead somewhere else, right? Within the company, of course. I mean, if they're a great employee, we want to keep them. So, and I think that's where a good leader can really come in and help facilitate that. It doesn't mean you never come back to the group. It doesn't mean that you don't, there's not opportunity, but I'm with you on that. I think people can do it. I've seen it done well also, but I've seen it be a very, very difficult transition. And I think as a leader, you can set you can set your people up for success if you really take that into consideration, the person's personality and how long they've been in the group. I mean, there's a lot of factors. So you just got to weigh all those in and really help them be successful, not set them up to fail.
Yeah, sometimes the change is so big and drastic. So you are day in and day out preparing, you are day in and day out calibrating, and out of a sudden you are the leader. You have and there are kind of some soft skills that you have to fine tune, you have to develop if you don't have them. For example, doing presentations, making presentations to upper management. Out of a sudden, you are new to the position. You may not have all the computer skills that you need to prepare a presentation. You have never spoken in public, for example, and now you have to make a presentation on behalf of your department. Those are the things that I found that are really tough when those changes occur. And also writing reports. So I've had along my years technicians that become engineers and are now getting with the situation that they have to write reports for customers. And we don't like writing. That's kind of thing that we maintenance people work with. So out of a sudden now I have to write reports. I have to write emails. I have to be communicative. Also not only in written also. So those are the challenges that you maybe never thought about, and now you are facing. So it is, all the changes are challenging, and people can develop skills, yes, and coaching is needed. So we peers and also the new peers also will play a very relevant, important role with that person that just became a, let's say, an engineer, a supervisor, and wasn't accustomed to that role.
Awesome. I love that. I think something that kind of is coming up now for me, and a perfect transition into the kind of last big idea that I wanted to kind of hit on here was this idea of continuous learning, right? So to either be excellent in the role that you're currently in, or to kind of prepare yourself for making a transition into a new role. How would you recommend technicians continue their professional growth? Is it certifications? Is it mentorship? Is it just, individual learning, courses, books, things like that? What is kind of the best recommendation you have there for continuing learning and professional growth?
Well, I think it can be a combination of many of the things you just mentioned. It could be, it could be like a CMRT or a CMRP or CMRL certification, any of those, like from a reliability perspective. I think, when somebody desires to go into leadership, like leading technical people, a lot of times I really recommend sitting on and leading, not just sitting on a team, but leading a team and of technicians. Like in our example, we have small reliability technician teams, right? They're looking at lubrication practices or infrared, whatever it is. And it's like, if you want to be in leadership or even progress from a technical perspective, you need to step out of your comfort zone and maybe lead one of these efforts. That really can go a long way in an interview process, like especially within the company. I've seen is, I'm sure we're not unique, but your experience that you come to the table with versus like all the letters behind your name, even though that shows dedication to what you're learning. I think it's great. Don't get me wrong, but really being able to say, this is the project I worked on. This is the amount of money that we saved. This is the amount of time we saved, whatever it is, can go a really long way in an interview process and on your resume. So I think all of it's good. Sometimes I think if you're going into an engineering role, at least here, like if you're a technician, you don't have an engineering degree, like that's kind of a no-brainer. You got to go get one. Again, at least here in the US at this company, that's kind of a given. But leadership is can be a little bit different in some regards. If you, again, you're probably still going to have to do a little bit further education, but I think there's some other avenues there too.
Yeah, Michelle, I know that in the pharmaceutical industry, there is the position of leader technician or senior technician. Mm-hmm. That's a leader. That's a person that was a trade person, or maybe he or she is still a trade person, and is there for training others. Is there for working with the procedures, and that is a leadership, let's say, position for craft people. And sometimes that role of a trainer within the the trade person area are really important for the organization, because you are developing the skills of others. So as a career path, at least in the pharma industry, there are a couple of positions that typically technicians aspire to get to. One is, for example, the maintenance planner. You need there a person that really understands the business, how maintenance is done, because that person is gonna do estimations. That person has to know everybody, has to plan, has to schedule work. So the technical skills are there. What do we know? What do we need now? We need some soft skills. We need to know a bit about reliability. We need to know a bit about predictive maintenance, etc. Right? A little bit more from the managerial perspective. So those are paths that a technician can grow up to without the necessary engineering degree. So and those two, senior technicians and also maintenance scheduler within the pharma industry, it is pretty common.
Yeah, and I think that path you mentioned about maintenance planner, it's even outside the pharma. I know early in my career within steel making, the maintenance planners were the more senior
Mm-hmm.
skilled tradespeople, right? One, because they had the experience, they knew how the business ran, and you didn't actually need to have all the credentials from that perspective. Another thing, and it goes along the lines of broadening your breadth of knowledge, right? I know Michelle mentioned like CMRT and things like that, but getting your certification in some of these predictive technologies that your company's using, or that maybe you think they should be using, and you can kind of be proactive and push leadership into that, is getting certified in infrared, getting certified in ultrasound. If your company has a robust vibration analysis program, you can start getting certified at being a vibration analysis. That's another way that you can kind of build your knowledge base without going a formal educational route, and be more valuable to your organization.
Even Joe, learning more about reliability, because there is a difference between maintenance and reliability.
Exactly.
So like cross the border, go to reliability, and understand how your work impacts reliability for your company. So that is maybe a technical type of path that people can just go through without the need of a degree. For example, you can become if you have facilitation skills, you can become an RCM facilitator. But you have to learn the business better. You have to know about production. You have to know about the impacts in quality, etc. But you already have a tremendous background that will help you to go to those positions, to aspire to those positions. So as Joe says, and Michelle also, learn more.
Yep.
Educate
Yep.
yourself more. It doesn't have to be necessarily an engineering degree, but there are lots of training, there are lots of things out there, challenges that we can just recommend to technicians just for improving their career.
Yeah, there's so much stuff available now. I mean, events like this, webinars, conferences. I know I'm a big proponent of my team. We try to rotate people through some key conferences that are held every year, and some key activities, right? Whether it's the SMRP activities locally that we have around us, or the national, or some key conferences like the one down in Knoxville that the University of Tennessee hosts, the Marcon. We always rotate people through, because I'm a big proponent of continuous education. And we actually have a metric in our department that we track that. I make sure that I spend so much % of our budget on training my team. So
awesome.
Another question, kind of, again, Joe, you're doing a great job helping me with my transitions today. I heard you mention being proactive in there, and one of the questions that we got from the community that I loved and want to just kind of read directly was, as a technician, how can I influence a proactive culture towards leadership? So whether that's maybe proactive maintenance, or just being proactive, as a skill, as an approach to how you work. How can a technician kind of take that upon themselves and influence those around them?
That question was an interesting one when I read the pre-read on that, right? And Michelle, the first person I thought of, and I know you know who this is, it was Todd, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a technician on our team that both Michelle and I know, and he kind of did this within our organization. He was interested and engaged in improving how the department did our business, and he was going at it from the perspective of, we got to get better with predictive technologies, right? So he actually put together a packet to kind of present to the organization of how we can use some of these tools to enhance what we do, right? And was the way that he was trying to be proactive to leadership. And it kind of sparked really a lot of the momentum that got us going to where we are now. And you don't have to all do something like that. That's one way to do it. Another way is just lead by example, right? It kind of goes back to that peer pressure conversation we were having earlier, right? If you want to be a technician and be more proactive, one, start leading by example. Talk to your leadership about, you're being purposeful with it. And then hopefully it's kind of like that first follower methodology. If you guys ever seen that video on YouTube, right? The crazy guy dancing at the concert and then everybody else starts dancing with him. That's exactly the type of momentum that's organic and it'll last if you can get more people on board with you.
Yeah, I agree. That particular technician, I know that Joe and I both know. I mean, he, over the last handful of years, has done such a good job from having initiative and continuing, even though, again, I know it's crazy over in manufacturing, there's a million different priorities, like really holding fast to the vision of reliability and continuing his education and even reaching out. So Joe and I, we report to different organizations and we're on the same campus, but our teams are completely separate. So my team's doing their reliability thing, Joe's is doing his, and I've seen that particular technician reach out to my team and, work together, right? So like, infrared is infrared, right? I mean, whether you're manufacturing or facilities, I mean, obviously different equipment, but just as an example, I've really seen that type of initiative is awesome. And you're right, it catches on, like that peer pressure, if you want to call it that, where, the other technician's like, wait a minute, what is he doing? That looks pretty cool. Oh, why he's getting to go to conferences? That's awesome. Like, what is this reliability thing all about? So that to me is awesome. And I think if you can find the one or two in your group and help get them going and give them ideas, the others will follow in a good way. And as I'm the same as Joe, where we really set aside a very specific, pretty sizable amount of our budget every year for conferences and training and certification exams, you name it. We have it available. We make that a priority to invest in our team that way, and it really helps them hearing it from others in the across industry. What's going on in other companies? They can really bring that back and help us be more proactive.
We have leaders in every position, in every standpoint. So leader is a person that is knowledgeable about the company needs, about the company goals, and not only is worried about himself or herself to comply with those, to attain those, but also help others to go to and find them and attain those goals. And we have technicians and also managers, also engineers that are very good leaders. Being a leader is wanting to improve things continuously, wanting to do things better, being aware of the company goals, objectives, and see what are the gaps they're not allowing to go there. So if technicians, engineers, everybody, any person that wants to be a leader, be aware of the company's objectives. What is the company pursuing? And see how you can improve, how you can contribute towards that. And be a role model, become a role model. That's contagious. If you become a leader and within your group, you'll be sure that you will have some couple of followers, and you will be also working towards that. So you are. Let's see how I motivate the people around me to do the job. Peer pressure, as we said before.
That's awesome. Something that my mentor and my boss has instilled in me since we started working together was don't bring problems, bring solutions, right? So there's obviously a time and a space to be complaining and having problems, but there's nothing stopping you from taking the initiative and solving it, right? If you're noticing something and it's upsetting you or it's interfering with the way you're doing your job, how can you solve for that instead of just sitting there complaining about it? It's something that she taught me very early on, and I'm super appreciative of.
Heather, Michelle and I have work because there are failures. We are reliability engineers, and reliability is the study of failures. So there have to be failures. There have to be challenges in order for us to improve, right? So that is part of the technician's life. That is part of the leader, life. We have to acknowledge those failures, acknowledge those situations, and go ahead and improve them. Figure out how to improve them.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing that we are winding down on time here, I want to ask maybe one final question, and then we'll close it out. But my last question is a pretty broad one. But what is kind of your best advice for a technician just starting out in the industry today? How can they set themselves up for long-term success?
I mean, a lot of our conversation around today was about continuously learning. So that would be my message, right? Get your feet wet, get started, get your foundation sturdy, and then find what you're interested in, and then dig in deep in learning about it. And then as your interests change throughout your career, don't be afraid to keep learning something new.
I think that's great advice, Joe. And I think just as quick as, technology changes so quick, even in the facilities world, we're seeing so much change in terms of just refrigeration requirements, just because environmental impact and things like that. So some of the technicians I have on my team stay up on that stuff so well. So even outside of all the reliability stuff we're doing, they also have their quote unquote day jobs of maintaining the site and doing work orders, and they're members of organizations that, they really keep us, because they keep us up to date on that stuff. I can't possibly know everything, just like Joe, just like Jesus, just like whether you're an engineer or manager. So these guys having a team that is continuously curious and they're wanting to learn and they're staying on top of the new regulations and the new technology is so helpful. And you can do that no matter where you're at in your career. So I think, having a good foundation is absolutely imperative. And then, again, being curious and continuing the learning and keeping everybody on top of what's going on and all the new things in the industry is super helpful. It makes the technicians even that much more valuable.
I have been blessed to be surrounded by good technicians during all my career. When I started as an engineer, I didn't know anything about the industry. I just was a theoretical guy. I just studied mechanical engineering, a lot of labs, in school, but nothing, real in the field. And those technicians that worked with me back in 1991, my first work, they teach me. They were teaching me how to do things, how to do, precision maintenance, how to lubricate, things like that. So technicians are so important, for an organization. And we as managers, supervisors need to acknowledge that, these guys are really important for a company to attain, the objectives. We may put together the most beautiful plans, the most beautiful, whatever plan we want to make, somebody else has to do it. The maintenance plan, the reliability plans, there has to be people down there doing the actual work. So these guys are, the foundation, of a company. So there is lots of opportunities for technicians to grow, and it could be educational. You can just grow by educating yourself more, getting a degree, or even within the same technical career. There are other paths. I had technicians when I worked in the industry that were electricity technicians, instrumentation technicians, then HVAC technicians. They just kept, learning more and studying more technical stuff, and get really good in many other stuff. Later on, they became planners, they became trainers, and there's, a lot of path in there, so for you to follow and attain success.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I see we're at the end of our hour here. I appreciate all of you sharing with us today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I see in the chat that much of our audience did too. Thank you once again for making the time to be here. I do want to give you the opportunity to share any ways that people can stay in touch with you. I know Joe, again, with the right on point with my predictions today. I know Joe mentioned he's available in the Slack community. I'm dropping that link on how to join now. All of our speakers here are available on there, but Joe, Michelle, or Jesus, if there's any other way that people can get in touch with you, I would love to hear that, or feel free to drop it in the chat too, just kind of as we close out.
Yeah, pretty much Slack or LinkedIn. I know Heather because I've been on a lot of these with you guys, so I know your cadence.
Yeah, you got it. One step ahead of me the whole time.
I'm just writing down my email, and you can find me in that email, also in Conscious Reliability, through the maintenance community and through LinkedIn, of course.
Awesome.
Yep, I just dropped my contact in there as well. So appreciate it.
Appreciate it so much. Thank you all for joining us today. I will see you all soon, and have an awesome rest of your Tuesday.
Yep, enjoy your day.
All right, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.